is we have over now, but we're going to get started. This group are and pass over to Sylvia. Wahira, we don't hear you. I think you're on mute, or your settings are off. So yeah, Wahira, we don't hear you.
Right. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, very well.
Hello.
Yes, very well. Hello, we hear you now.
Rano? Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. It is my fault. Yeah, partially my fault. Can you hear me now?
Yes, no problem. I think you should restart from the beginning. Wahira, we don't hear you again. I'm sorry.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello.
Yes.
Right. I'll speak. Yeah, without headphone. Right. Yes. Now you can hear me, right? Okay. Hi, everybody.
Yes, we hear you well now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. So shall I start again? Yes.
Yes, please start again. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, I will start again. Hi, everybody. I am Vajira from Sri Lanka, the Paradise Island, the country like no other. And I wish North and South America very good morning and very good afternoon to Europe and very good evening to rest of the world. And I welcome all of you warmly to the fourth meeting of the virtual group on targets, indicators, and milestone. As you know, this is the fourth meeting of this nature, virtual meeting, and this is the first in this year. And I thank all of you for your enthusiastic participation up to now. You have been very enthusiastic, very encouraging, and very committed. So we, as co-facilitators, and on behalf of Brenda, my counterpart from UNEP, and Sylvia, my fellow co-chair, we thank all of you for your enthusiastic, dedicated, and committed work towards this common objective. And up to now, we have received 12 electronic submissions, and we have independently reviewed, Brenda, Sylvia, and myself, and also we have collectively discussed and we have compiled your submissions, and the compilations have been shared with you. And as you know, today's meeting, we have reserved 3 hours, so we have substantial time to discuss the issues of concern. That is our agenda. As you know, agenda has 6 agenda items. Basically, Sylvia and myself will conduct today's meeting together with Brenda. And as you know, today's objective is we have sent to the compilations of your electronic submissions. We have requested you to go through compilation, and also we have proposed discussion tree that have been shared with you, and the decision tree to guide our discussion towards decision making. So my fellow co-chair Sylvia will explain you in detail about the decision tree, and also we have requested you to discuss amongst your colleagues in your sectors, your regions, as a preparation for this meeting. So we have invited you to go through the decision tree in advance, and we hope that you have come prepared. So it would be very easy for us if you have come prepared to discuss. And once again, I thank all of you for your dedicated, committed work towards this common objective. And having said that, as you see the agenda today, we have to discuss the general comments about your submissions, and also oral interventions by the registered participants, and also our next steps. What would be the next? Because we are looking forward to face-to-face meeting at IP4 and ICCM5. So having said that, let me hand over the floor to Brenda for further deliberation. Brenda, over to you.
Thank you very much, Wahira. And we heard you very clearly now, so that's very helpful. Great. Just think that you're maybe just write the word speak. And I wish to just pass the floor
Sorry, Brenda, it is difficult to understand. It's your speech is not clear.
I'm hearing it better now. Video considerations. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you clearly because it has been disturbing. And yes, Brenda, now I can hear you.
Okay, my apologies for the technical problems. So I just want to remind delegates that in order to take the floor, we wish you to raise your hand, and I think this group has experience with it. So just use the hand function. If you have no access to the hand function, you can write a message in the to everyone chat, and we will collect your name for the list of speakers. And that's how we'll get started overall. I think you're familiar with the process. So I think on that note, I wish to pass the floor back to the co-facilitators in order to get started in the actual content of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. I think now I invite Sylvia. Is that Sylvia or me? Okay. So as you see, we have received 12 electronic submissions from different parts, different sections and organizations: Brazil, Canada, UN member states, Iran, Jordan, Norway, Japan, Norway, Switzerland, UK, USA, UNEP, and group of NGOs, and ICC and CropLife. And yeah, I want to move to the next slide. Right. So as you know, today's discussion is on inputs provided for targets under strategic objective C. As you know, the strategic objective C is the issues of concern that warrant global and joint action identified, prioritized, and addressed. So you see there are so many brackets, but don't worry about the brackets. We are not going to deal with brackets today. So let us deal with the bracket in our face-to-face meeting, because this is not a negotiation, or we will not come to consensus as such. So general comments on the electronic submissions. We need to go into in-depth discussions on target formulations under strategic objective C. Actually, it is a difficult objective because it has no boundaries as such, so no horizons. So sky is the limit. So we need, as the virtual working groups, deliberations on issues of concerns that you have electronically submitted. Brenda, I find it difficult to go through the slides, to go to the next slides. Can Alex, are you there to help me? When I say the next slide, please go to the next slide.
Thank you, Ahira. You cut out for a couple of moments, couple of seconds there.
Okay. Right. As you see, we have under strategic objective C, we have targets 1 and C1 and alternative C1. So the C1 says the programs of work, including timelines, are established, adopted, and implemented for identified issues of concern. That is the original C1. And as you see, the alternative is alternative C1 is as an ongoing process. Stakeholders nominate and the international conference adopts issues of concern with specific goals. So we have to decide. Right. Next slide, please. Right. Thank you. The target C2. Information on the properties and risk management of chemical across the supply chain and the chemical content of products is available to all to enable informed decision. So this is mainly about the availability of data on chemicals and their risk management across the supply chain. As you see, the alternative target is, as an ongoing process, stakeholders implement work plans for adopted issues of concern and report on progress achieving their goals, such that the use of sustainable solution is maximized and significant negative impacts on human health and the environment are prevented or minimized. So target C2 also have original and as well as the alternative. So we have to discuss. Next slide, please. Right. There are new targets proposed under strategic objective C. As you see, there are 4 new targets. By 2020, pollution from chemicals and waste has been brought to levels that are not detrimental or harmful to ecosystem services and biodiversity. By 20XX, so we have to define what is XX, chemicals identified to warrant global action have been phased out or where not feasible are used in ways that prevent or minimize adverse impacts on human health and the environment to an unavoidable minimum throughout the life cycle. So the third strategic object, the third target is by 2023, there is agreement on a model to strengthen the engagement of the scientific community to provide a consensus on the evidence for addressing issues of concern and provide a horizon scanning function to identify new issues of concern. Target 4 is by 2030, all countries have legal binding limit to lead for lead in paint. So it is about hazardous heavy metal lead in paint. So specific details to be agreed. Next slide, please.
So hello everyone, and before we maybe move on to this next slide, perhaps we can move back a bit. There is what we wanted today, because it came out from a fair amount of your submissions. Did I remember to wish you Happy New Year? I'm not sure, but Happy New Year. So over the course of the holidays, you submitted your thoughts, and as regards to your submissions for the strategic objective C targets, then we received quite a few comments where you had the, if we can move back one more slide, sorry, where there was a general agreement, well, not a general agreement, but it seemed like it came out as an agreement through your submissions, that you felt that the further in-depth discussions on target formulations under this particular strategic objective need to be conducted after the results of the virtual working group deliberations on IOC have been completed. And as we know, many of you, have been working virtually in more than just one group, and it is quite a task to keep up with everything that is going on in the various groups. And thus we were happy that Thomas actually agreed to join us today, so that he would be able to give us a kind of a status update on the discussions on issues of concern in his group. Not going into too much detail, but just to focus on those issues which are definitely, regard to our discussions on how to formulate targets, indicators, milestones. So we do know that until the group on IOCs reaches a certain point in their discussion on what to do further, and how to deal with the IOCs, that will have a direct impact on our targets, how they're formulated. So I understand Thomas is with us, so I would like to give him the floor now to be able to explain, where he feels their discussion is relevant to our discussion, to provide input on these targets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. I believe you can hear me now. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to join your group and give just a very brief overview of where we are in the Issues of Concern group. Now, there's obviously an important connection between the Issues of Concern and the work that is being done in our group and your work on Objective C. And we are very pleased that your group will take the work on Objective C forward. Now, yesterday, the co-facilitators of the Issues of Concern group, that's Sam Adekumi and myself, released our draft outcome document for the Issues of Concern process. And our next and final meeting is on Monday. So the members of that group will have, approximately 6 days to reflect on the draft that Sam and I have sent out. And then based on the discussions on Monday, we will then hand over the outcome document from our group to the co-chairs of the intersessional process. Now, as part of our mandate, our group is also working on a proposed process for the existing emerging policy issues. And looking at the discussions that we've had so far, it seems that our virtual working group would like to see a decision on the next steps for each of the existing emerging policy issues at ICCM5. So there will be a need to reflect on targets and indicators for the existing emerging policy issues that become part of the new instrument. I'll leave it at that for now, but I'm of course ready to answer or try to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, because I think that was one of the things that we were struggling with, as far as I could gather from the submissions, in regard to our target formulations. So if we move ahead a bit on the slides where we have the new targets, I think it's the 2 more slides ahead. So we do have this kind of the two different approaches, which is to have, you know, more the general targets, and one of the comments that have come through the submissions is that they are too much process orientated. So those would be obviously not for the existing IOMCs, but on how the process is developed for those IOCs that are have not yet been, if I can say it that way. And then, for instance, on this slide, you can see, you know, that there's a target, you know, that would be, I assume, similar to kind of the kind that could be under existing IOCs, where you actually have a very, you know, trying to make a more specific target and indicator as far as the action to be conducted under the IOCs. So those would be definitely not process orientated, but they would be very much focused on reaching a certain result as far as how that IOC would be dealt with. So I think that that's our common understanding, if I understand, Thomas.
Yeah, I see. I was just unmuted. I was about to reply in the chat. Yes, that's true, Sylvia. Thank you.
Okay, so perhaps while Thomas is still with us, if there are any comments that or questions that we might have towards Thomas now, that we don't want to go into detail on the results of the discussion, because obviously from what we heard from Thomas, then after their next meeting, he could give us more detail, but input. But as far as the current process and would be helpful as we move forward in the target formulation, please, I'll allow you to write those questions now in chat if you would like, or raise your hand, please. Okay, I see we have one hand up. I'm not clear. Is it, it's the government of Japan representative.
See the government of Japan asking for the floor. So if you could unmute the government of Japan.
Oh, can you hear me? Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and Happy New Year, everyone. This is Suki from Government of Japan. And we like the idea of this general target and indicator for SOC, because the SOC should be able to, the target for the SOC should be able to overarch the variety of IOC. But the new target written on this slide sounds more like the target for the beyond 2020 instruments rather than specifically for the SOC. Can we make a comment on like a overall comment on SOC right now? Or
actually, what we don't want to keep Thomas very long, because I'm sure he's very busy trying to prepare for his meeting. I know what it takes to prepare for the meeting. So what we would like to take now is if we have any questions for Thomas, and if not, then we'll let Thomas go, and we can continue discussing the strategic objective C targets.
okay, so we'll come back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any others, please, in the chat or raise your hands. Otherwise, we will let Thomas go and move back a couple of slides again. Okay, it seems people are ready to get into the discussion then. And Thomas, then I would like to thank you for giving us this update. I think it's very helpful, and depending on how our work moves further, then we definitely will be interested to hear how your solutions in regards to the existing IOCs move forward. So I think I will give the floor back to my co-facilitator, and we'll move back to 2 slides, I think, and have some discussion on the target formulations under the strategic objectives.
But I see in the chat that Nilzuki Gwai from South Africa would like to have the floor. Apparently her hand was raised, but it disappeared.
Okay, sorry. Yes, please, Suki, go ahead.
Zuki, you're now
Hi.
unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you, Thomas, for the feedback. Mine is a request. The two are feeding into each other. That we should try by all means going forward. I've written about this to the Secretariat, that the two shouldn't clash, because the two virtual groups are feeding into each other. So my request is that kindly try by all means as much as possible that there should be, like we have done, brought Thomas to this group to feedback, cognizant of the fact that the two are feeding into each other. They are supposed to be supporting and complementing each other, because you don't want to go ahead far with the other and being realized later on that we should have crafted this way because that's how we agreed to in the other group. That's one issue that I'm requesting for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suki. I don't know, Sylvia, whether you would like me to reply or just comment to. Yeah, I think. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Suki, and thank you for raising this very important issue. We're fully aware of that. I'd like to thank the co-facilitators of this group, for Gira and Sylvia, for excellent cooperation so far in this process. We've been very much working together on this, and kept each other in touch of what's happening in the different groups. I think from our side, Sam and I have been very happy to see that you in your group have been willing to take the work on SOC forward, since you're already into sort of, I would say, the methodology of these objectives now, which we may not be so very much into in our group. But thank you for raising this very important point, Suki. I see that there is also a question from Canada, I believe now.
Can
Hello?
we unmute? Yeah.
Oh, hi, this is Victoria Tunstall from Canada. I have a question of clarification. I'm feeling a little bit lost. If I understand correctly, then has the decision been made that targets and indicators for the issues of concern will be submitted as part of objectives A, B, D, and E? Has that decision been made? Thomas,
Sorry.
I don't recall there being any discussion of it, so I'm just trying to catch up, I guess.
Okay, sorry. I mean, I don't know if I understood your question correctly, but the idea is that you will now discuss SOC, right? In this group.
Okay, so we are going to discuss whether or not or how we would capture the targets or the indicators for issues of concern in the targets and indicator framework.
Yes, and then
Okay.
of course, cognizant that we have not yet, I mean, this is still work in process from our side as well.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Sylvia, I believe that's everything. I mean, all questions in your group. So
Well, thank you, Thomas, for your availability today. And as you said, we'll keep in touch on the progress and as we wind down this part of the virtual working group process this month. So
Well,
thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Yes. So the information from Thomas was to provide you just for an update on what is going on in that virtual working group, because when we initially started our work, we said that it was important that we keep these two groups work together, or at least keep abreast of one another's progress, and that's why we thought it was important that Thomas give us a brief on at what stage they are at this stage. So I think we can move back, and Wahira was going to take back the control on the discussion of these targets. So we move back to general discussions on these two targets that we have and the new targets that we have under the strategic objective. So I think what we could do is, slide by slide, we have your submissions, but you've now had an opportunity to look at your colleagues' submissions. And perhaps you've also had an opportunity to look at the summary tables that we did compile over the holiday period. And then we could have exchange on the target C1 and its alternative, target C2, and then have a discussion also on the new targets that have been proposed through your submissions. So I'll give the floor to Wahira now. Microphone, I think, Wahira.
Sorry. It's okay now. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
All right. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we have to discuss about the proposed target C1 and alternative C, and also other targets. So let me introduce what is C1. So it says programs of work, including timelines, are established, adopted, and implemented for identified issues of concern. That is the original C1. And alternative, as you see, as an ongoing process, stakeholders nominate and the international conference adopts issues of concern with specific goals. So we like to know about your comments. So if you have any thing to share or make your comments, please raise your hand. I think Sylvia, you will control the flow, right?
I think well, here I'll keep the speakers list. It's Brenda. So I see already that Semia Garbi is asking for the floor. Semia, go ahead and please identify your organization.
Yeah, thank you, and Happy New Year for all of you. So,
please talk loudly.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Do you hear me? I like this. Is it okay?
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So, Happy New Year, and I'm Semia.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, I represent IPEN, the International Pollutants Network, Elimination Network. So I wanted to highlight a point. So with the new proposal that we have seen, so it is like a duplication with the target A. So if we return back to the target A, there are we talked about the chemicals, but this is for the target C. It is an option to go with more specific chemicals. So as IPAN, so we would like to propose by 2030, the international conference has adopted issues of concerns. That means it is an open window for the chemicals. So has adopted issues of concern with specific goals. So this is what we propose as for C1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other person wants to speak, please?
I see Zuki from South Africa,
Yeah,
followed
Suki,
by Matthias Wolf from the European Union. So go ahead, please, and unmute Zuki. And Happy New Year, Zuki.
Thank you for unmuting me. Happy New Year, Brenda, and to you all colleagues. Thank you for that. Let me just try to highlight what I was saying before. For example, this goes back to what I was saying. Ideally, this is what I would recommend. Prefer alt, but also with alt, there's a part that is missing. After stakeholders nominate, who recommends? For example, in the nomination issue and in the meetings that we've been able to attend, I didn't attend all of them because of the very same clashes I was talking about with the other meetings, whether it's SAICEM or Minamata or UNEP. The issue that we're pushing for as the African group was that there should be an independent scientific body to recommend to ICCM. Reason being, to address or to mitigate against issues of bullying and so forth that we've witnessed before. So temporarily, this is what I would say. After stakeholders nominate, insert independent scientific body, assesses and recommends. Because that process is missing there. It's vague. And the minute it's vague like this, we will automatically go back to what we're doing, whereby a country nominates, submits to ICCM, and it's a messed up process because the science is not protected. Science assessment has to be independent, has to be done by scientists. And that component, the issue of an independent scientific body, it falls within the issues of consent, the process of nomination. Hence, I was saying these two groups should never clash and there should be time to accommodate each other. So if I were to go to choose of the two as the African group, it would be alt, and in alt, insert after nominate, an independent scientific body assesses and recommends to. That's the part that is missing. Thank you.
Thank you, Suki, for your comments.
Okay, we then have Matthias from the EU, followed by Laura from the USA. Go ahead, Matthias.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and Happy New Year to all of you from the European Union I'm speaking for. I would like to thank at first to the co-facilitators and the second secretariat again for all the effort and very much appreciated documents you provided for this fourth meeting of the virtual working group. With regard to the both target proposals, we do not see a need for both of them, as we declared already in our written feedback, because we think that targets should have an added value with regard to the rest of the text of the framework. And the content of both of these proposals is already captured in the modalities for issues of concern under discussion in the group of Thomas and Sam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias. Then we'll go to Laura Nazef from the USA. Go ahead, Laura.
Thanks, Brenda. Happy New Year, everyone. Just as we and other stakeholders have noted, it's important to retain a strategic objective related to issues of concern or interest. We would add or interest to encourage a focus on innovation and sustainable approaches. We do agree with others on that there's a process-oriented nature to the current targets. We're fine with targets Alt C1 and Alt C2 with the addition of interest after issues of concern. And we also like the alternative formulations for C1 that were proposed by the UK and also by Canada. And then we think that instead of defining the targets at this time, the text of the instrument could simply state that targets are to be developed, or as Canada has suggested, are incorporated by reference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next person, please.
Yeah, the next we have is Claire Dixon from the United Kingdom. Go ahead, Claire.
Thank you very much, and thanks again for preparing this. Our general point was that on target C1 and the alternatives for C1 and C2, the inclusion of the fact that it's an ongoing process, I think, is at odds with the fact that it's a target, because a target, I think by definition, is working towards something specific. So our preference is to work towards something more like C1 and C2, the original targets, and we have suggested some updates to the wording there, and also to support, as just mentioned, that we would like inclusion of the specific targets related to the issues of concern in some way incorporated here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. Great, thank you. Well, here next on our list is Auden from Norway, followed by Michelle Sheeran from Switzerland. So go ahead, Auden.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to all. In our opinion, the issue-specific targets or goals should be managed within each issue of concern. And this would ensure a predictable and systematic approach for both the targets and indicators of the Beyond 2020 instrument and for the different issues of concern. And the targets or goals of the different issues should be exactly the same and equally important if managed within a work plan of each issue of concern, as compared to if they are formal targets. In both cases, they should be the basis for reporting of progress. We are currently fine with the alternative versions of C1 and C2. While it could be an effective solution to add a reference on the strategic objective C to targets or goals developed for each issue to be used in the measuring process rather than having specific targets and indicators. Thank you.
Thank you, Auden. The next we have Michelle Sheeran from Switzerland, followed by the government of Japan. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Happy New Year to all from Switzerland. And I would like to start by thanking the co-chairs and the Secretariat for having worked also during the holiday season and for having prepared the very useful compilation documents and suggestions. That is very much appreciated. From our point of view, it is very important to have to put down under strategic objective C what needs to be achieved by when, so that it will be easier to focus resources and work in order to achieve progress that has not been achieved to a satisfactory level up to now. And so that does not exclude including process aspects, but process targets alone would not be sufficient. And we therefore welcome, or we're happy to see suggestions that we now have to include also targets from existing issues. I see there's an example on lead in paint. And so we believe that such wordings should be included and should be discussed by this group, including their time frame. And in fact, such targets, so the ideal would be that we would have such a target for each of the existing issues to make it very concrete what we want to achieve by when. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, please, Brenda.
The next speaker is the government of Japan. Please go ahead, Japan.
Thank you. We echo Canada's proposal that the target and the SOC can focus on the implementation of the IOC work plan. It is difficult to have uniform targets because each IOC has very different nature. Japan proposed in the written input that each IOC work plan should include at least one target and an indicator, so developing overarching general targets and indicators for IOC implementation, and separately developing individual targets and indicators for each IOC upon each submission feel effective way forward to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan.
Great.
Next, Brenda.
I don't see anyone else asking for the floor. Maybe just give us a few seconds here.
See whether there are legacy hands.
I see Servet Gorin from ICCA asking for the floor. Go ahead, Servet.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year to all. We would like to note that there is still some disagreement among the stakeholders as to whether the targets under this objective should measure the progress on individual issues of concern or rather focus it on the process. So we would like to see the important function, which is that stakeholders identify, nominate, and the ICCM to review and adopt the issues of concern. So therefore we support the alt texts of C1 and C2. As it was also mentioned in the Virtual Working Group 3 under Thomas, discussions by various stakeholders, by adopting a new process, we recommend not to lose the work already done by the various groups under the current APIs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more hands, Brenda?
I don't see any other hands. Let's just give it another few seconds. Oh, I see Canada, Victoria Turnstall asking for the floor. Go ahead, Victoria.
Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year, and good morning, good evening, good night. I'm sorry I forgot to say that the first time that I spoke today. I just wanted to thank people for their support for Canada's proposal on the incorporation by reference. And I think that this might address the concern that was just raised, that the current targets are process-oriented. So in this manner, the more substantive targets would be incorporated by reference as they are agreed by the conference. So hopefully it would be a nice, easy solution, so we wouldn't have to keep updating the framework every single time, the targets and indicated framework every single time we have a new issue of concern. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Victoria.
Okay, I think that might be all that we've had for the C1, unless anyone else wants to raise their hand.
And shall we move to the next slide, Brenda?
Yeah, I think it's time to move to the next slide, Bahira.
Right, thank you. Yeah, target C2 and alternative C2. So target C2, the original says information on the properties and risk management of chemical across the supply chain and the chemical contents of products is available to all to enable informed decisions. So the alternative C2 says as an ongoing process, stakeholders implement work plans for adopted issues of concern and report on progress achieving their goal, such that the use of sustainable solutions is maximized and significant negative impact on human health and the environment are prevented or minimized. So again, we have two options. So floor is open. So it is your time to respond, please. Brenda, can you please?
Yes, absolutely. I'll just wait a few moments. I know a couple people did give some inputs on C2 as we introduced the conversation, and we've noted those as a secretariat, but the floor is open on C2. Meanwhile, while we wait, oh, thank you, Matthias. Matthias from the European Union has asked for the floor. Go ahead, Matthias.
Yes, thanks, Brenda, for giving me the floor again. Yeah, just as for the target proposals C1, we also don't see added value by both of the proposals for target C2. The content is already captured either by other targets, in particular those on the B and D, or by the modalities for issues of concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias. Any more hands, Brenda?
No, not for the moment. Let's give it a few seconds. Okay, I see Abbas Torabi from Iran is asking for the floor. So please go ahead, Abbas.
Thank you very much. Good time, everybody, and Happy New Year. Regarding the target of C2, it has referred to implementing work plans. As you know, SciCam is voluntary-based instrument, and implementing work plans maybe it's not appropriate for this instrument until there is sufficient technical capacities and transfer of technology and financial resources for the government stakeholders to implement such work plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Abbas. See any other hands at the moment?
Nobody.
I think maybe we can close this item if there's anyone else who would like the floor. Okay, I don't think anyone else is asking for the floor, Wahira, so you can move to your next step.
Go to the next slide, please. Right, so Sylvia has already briefly explained you the new targets. As you see, 4 new targets have been proposed. So I have read the 4 new targets. Now it is your time and opportunity to comment on these new targets. So please feel free to make your comments. So the new targets have interesting things. So I hope that this is very sensitive, and I expect much deliberations on these new targets. So please go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so we have Hiroyuki Mashida asking for the floor, followed by Andrea Rother. So please go ahead, Hiroyuki.
Thank you, brother. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can hear.
Yes.
We can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and Happy New Year, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to make an intervention related to the fourth item of the new target, say 30. All countries have legally binding limit for leave in paint. Our point of view is that there are countries that really need legally binding system, maybe, while other countries don't need legally binding methods to limit leave in paint. So I think that the requirement of legally binding one to all countries here is too much. And I'd like to propose to edit this target into, for example, by 2030, all countries taking account of its situation make a measure to set a certain limit for leave in paint, including voluntarily and legally binding manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your valuable comments.
Thank you, Hiroyuki. Yeah, next speaker is Andrea Rother from the University of Cape Town. Go ahead, Andrea. Can someone unmute Andrea, please?
And I hope that it's a good and successful year for all. My concern is particularly with target 1 and 2 and a little bit of 3, that how are these going to be measured? And my feeling is that particularly if you look at the first one, brought to levels that are not detrimental, without having indicators defining what detrimental is, it's going to be very problematic to see whether this target has been met or not. So I'm a bit concerned with these two, particularly the first 2 bullet points, that it has terminology in it that is quite difficult to actually say whether it has been met or not, and becomes then not so meaningful. So either this has to be coupled with indicators that unpack non-detrimental, or we need to look for different terminology. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
Great. Next, I see UK, Claire Dixon. I just also want to note that I see Olga Sparinskaya has marked a number of comments in the chat. Olga, if you're able to speak, I would encourage you to raise your hand. It's up to you. But first, we'll go to the UK, Claire Dixon.
Thank you. Oh, hi, yes, thank you. I just wanted to come back on that last point about the indicators, really, specifically with targets, the first target there about biodiversity, just to say that I completely agree that indicators are obviously needed to make sure that the targets are measurable, and that's why we're advocating an iterative process where we look to develop the indicators alongside the targets to make sure that the wording is in fact what is required to measure. But also on the point for the biodiversity target, this is something that our colleagues in the CBD framework are looking to adopt as well. So I think for that one in particular, we'd very much be looking to take their lead on the kind of wording that we have as a biodiversity target as the experts in this field. So we would want to get some harmonization across our framework and the CBD framework here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. Next, we have Laura Nazef from USA.
Thank you. We agree with Andrea about the difficulty of measuring some of these, and also wanted to note that some of them are also more broad than the Beyond 2020 instrument would be. And in addition, on the second one, just because a chemical is identified to warrant global action does not mean that it needs to be phased out. So I think some work would need to be done on some of these targets. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Laura. Olga, would you like to take the floor? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just noticed you marked quite a few comments in the chat. Seeing any other hands in the meantime, either just looking for hands up. I see Olga's hand is up, so can we give Olga the floor, please?
Thank you very much, Brenda. We decided to put our comments into the chat just to save time, and we will definitely speak at a later stage. But for now, we just included our comments into the chat box. Thank you.
Thanks, Olga. I didn't put you on the spot, but thank you. Any other hands up on these new targets? Okay, well, I think here I don't see any other comments or hands up at this point.
We'll move to the next slide. Can we?
Yeah.
Right. So I think decision diagram proposed by co-facilitator is Sylvia. It is her brainchild. I think Sylvia, you should take over.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Wahira. And I think, yeah, we have a quite valuable discussion on the target Cs, which is I think is very helpful as we move forward. So yes, in an attempt to looking over your submissions and the comments that you made previous to the holiday. When was it? I can't remember now. Yeah, it was, I think it was somewhere between the last time we met and the time we're meeting now. We received your submissions in regards to the way forward. We do need, our mandate is to propose recommendations on the way forward for indicators and milestones. And we looked through the submissions and tried to make it easier, recognizing that this might be our last meeting. We wanted to prepare a way in which we can discuss these different comments in a way that would be easier for us to, group the ideas and to move through the discussion. So that's why we, over the holidays created this decision diagram. But maybe it's better seen as maybe not a decision tree, as a discussion tree. So it's just meant to kind of group the different ideas in a way that you can kind of see their similarities and choose one wording. We did take the liberty of choosing one of the wordings that we had that in the places where we felt they were similar. and then kind of map how this might look, and so that we could have an easier time to go through this. So the things that we feel that we should have some sort of decision on, if we would like to propose these recommendations to the Bureau as we were tasked by the mandate, is the first decision is to understand whether we feel that there needs to be further work to be conducted on the targets, indicators, and milestones before IP4 and or ICCM5. That's the first thing we have to kind of understand if we agree, and if we can agree on this. Then whether there's a necessity that a group in some form continues the work, and then what kind of group is it that could either be established or continue the work. So obviously, if we foresee a similar group to the virtual working group 1 taking on or continuing some work, it would probably be favorable to continue the group's work rather than to establish a new group. So the type of group is important, though, to understand what kind of the type of work that we want the group to do is important in terms of understanding what kind of group can do that kind of work. And then the second would be kind of to understand the scope of the work. So one thing is the type of the work that needs to be done. So are we thinking that there needs to be further work, for instance, on target formulation or on indicators? And then the scope of the work. So there is the option, for instance, we have from our discussions on IOCs just now on the strategic objective C targets, some may feel that we need to park this particular target formulation until we have some completion of work under the virtual working group that's dealing with IOCs. Similarly, in the comments that we had from the strategic objective D targets, we had some submissions saying that the target formulations and indicators under the strategic objective D targets dealing with financing should be parked until the discussions on the integrated approach to financing are completed. So this would be a way that the scope would not be the full scope, perhaps, of the indicator framework for the instrument, but it might be, we might be making a selection of, how we would suggest that scope be narrowed to make a more efficient or to somehow limit the work that's being done to make it more possible, perhaps to finish, use it as a pilot to understand how this indicator framework might look, etc. So these are the different things that we wanted to create this discussion tree for, in order to be able to move forward and reach some sort of conclusion amongst ourselves. Sorry for explaining this very long, but I think it's important kind of to understand that, that's the way I want you to perceive it, as kind of a help, since we're, working in this virtual way, kind of as an assistance to kind of how to walk through the different discussions we might have on this. So we can move to the next slide, I think. Okay, so here, for instance, there are really, how we see it, there's two scenarios. So one scenario is that work needs to be continued in the time from now until IP4 and ICCM5, and there needs to be some work on targets, indicators, and milestones. And scenario two, where we feel there's no more work that needs to be conducted on targets and milestones at this time. So those are submissions that are not saying that we're done, because we're definitely not done, we all know, correct? But it is that this work, there are different circumstances why this work should be brought forward at a later date. So when we have more information, when we have the capacity to focus, when we are in a mode of negotiation. So these are just different arguments that we have. So I think maybe the best way to proceed before we move to the next slide is maybe to have just a general exchange on these two particular scenarios, just so I have some understanding of your thought. And then we can move to the next slide. And apologies if there are any questions also on the discussion tree, then perhaps you want to raise them now as well.
Okay, well, I see that the UK Samantha is asking for the floor to get started. Please go ahead, Samantha.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and a Happy New Year on behalf of the UK as well. Thank you very much to the co-facilitators and Secretariat for all of the work you've done on these decision trees. We thought they were very valuable, and the UK welcomes this work. We've had a look at the proposal and have actually prepared a hybrid proposal. Would it be possible, potentially, if I send it across to you now, would you then be able to upload it at a later date and I could present it to the group today? Thank you.
Yes, please send it to the Secretariat, and maybe not at this stage, but when we get past this slide, then definitely, if it's a hybrid proposal, then we can give you the opportunity to show that.
Okay, the next speaker is Auden from Norway.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you very much to the co-facilitators for preparing this decision tree or discussion tree. I think it is very valuable. From my point of view, I think it is very important to do more work on the targets and indicators and milestones. At this point, I think it would be a little bit premature if we were to decide and make adoptions on the targets, for example, at a later stage without having visited the indicators first. I think it is important to do an iterative process, as have been mentioned earlier today as well. And this is also the recommended methodology from the Cambridge workshop, where we look at the targets and indicators several times and adjust, for example, the target formulations according to the measurability as identified by its indicators. So I think it's very important to do that now. The current list of indicators is rather crude, although we have put quite a lot of work into this into these indicators, but the list is crude and needs to be developed a little bit further, I think. Currently we have, I counted 137 indicators in total, and it differs from 0 indicators for some targets and 19 indicators for one target at the most. So I think that this indicator list should be developed a little bit further before any further work is done on the indicators, as well as we need to realign the indicators with the targets which have been worked on since we last worked on the indicators. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Auden. Next speaker is Bob Diedrich, OECD, followed by Michelle from Switzerland. Go ahead, Bob.
All right, thank you very much. I would just like to fully agree with what Norway just said. I think we should split up the work on targets and to work on indicators. On targets itself, unless we really start going into negotiations, I think we can get a little bit further than we are today, but not much, I think. But on indicators, I think we need to get more serious and start actually advancing on it for the main purpose of for two purposes: seeing whether the targets that we're discussing right now, whether we can actually come up with something which is decently measurable. And the other reason is that it would be good if by ICCM5, when we adopt the targets, we can also already adopt a first batch of indicators, so that we can from day one measure some of the work that is going on throughout countries worldwide. And for the work on indicators, I think we need different expertise than that we have on the group today. So it would make sense, in my opinion, to set up a technical group where we can bring in our statisticians and our experts on indicators that can keep us on the right track when it comes to the development of the indicators that we're going to use in the end. And it would also be relevant to bring that work back to this group. It should inform, I think, the wording of our targets as they are now. And maybe make them more measurable in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next, we have Michelle, Switzerland, followed by Laura, USA, followed by Olga. So please go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Like the previous speakers, we also believe that work can be further advanced on targets, indicators, and milestones, and that we should seize this opportunity to do further work and advance the drafts that we can then further discuss at IP4 and ICCM5. So we strongly support this. We think it's necessary and it's possible. We would also like to note that we think the setting that we have had with this group worked really well to make advancements, meaning that there was the sequence of written inputs and then virtual discussion, which left time for people to consider different drafts and different written inputs. So we would encourage this to be considered when moving forward. And we would also like to echo the point made by Bob Dietrich from the OECD, saying that on the indicators part, additional expertise is necessary. And so we think, yes, it should be included in this group or the group that is going to do further work. And we think that's one of the advantages of the current virtual settings we happen to be in, is that additional people and expertise can be included. So we think it would be an opportunity to do so going forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Michelle. We have Laura, USA, followed by Olga, and followed by Matthias Wolf from the EU. So please go ahead, Laura.
Okay, thanks, Brenda. We want to thank the co-facilitators for preparing the decision tree. We do support further work being done on targets, indicators, and milestones before IP4 and or ICCM5. We think it would be helpful to establish a group to continue this work. We prefer option 1 in scenario 1 of the decision tree, a regionally balanced group of experts. We agree with the proposed guidance on indicators for the mandate of the group, but we also think that more work, needs to be done on the targets first. We have had a lot of discussions with many different alternative formulations and new targets, and the table that's proposed that's next on the agenda has the targets where we started. So I think that the group, in order to develop indicators, needs to have a better idea of what the actual targets would be. So those are the kind of the main points we wanted to make about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next is Olga, followed by Matthias. Please go ahead, Olga.
Thank you very much, Brenda. So we support the proposal by the co-facilitators to address the task of defining additional indicators to an expert group. And we also echo the point made by OECD and others that such a group needs different expertise for indicators. And so we think that this group should include representatives of all SACOM stakeholder groups to address this. And we also agree with the conditions the expert group should focus on as proposed in the submission from the EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olga. Followed, Matthias Wolf is next from the European Union, followed by Servet Gorin, followed by Priscilla from Brazil. Go ahead, Matthias.
Yes, thank you very much. Also, if we agree in principle with many of the things said by the previous speakers, we remain hesitant with regard to establish another group for additional discussion about indicators at this time before IP4 and ICCM5. As stated out already in our written feedback, in principle, as the US, we find that, or as many others, we find that targets and indicators should be developed in parallel, but in practical, this does not seem possible this time. Because there are many other topics that are not solved yet and still need further discussions. And that so far, we would like to suggest to continue our work up to IP4 on developing the targets further. That was like we understood the US before. And we think that there are some challenges in establishing another small group now, focusing on indicators as proposed, for example, by the OECD. One is the concerns raised by others and the fact that some stakeholders have obviously difficulties in taking part in the virtual work. These concerns have to be taken seriously. And in order to do so and to not challenge the approach of striving for global agreement, virtual work on indicators should be done only with general support from our UN regions. The same applies to an extension of the virtual working groups, virtual working group 1 as it is right now. If a process for work on indicators will be established, it has to be clear that any recommendation to ICCM will be provided by a policy group only, and there's definitely a need for a clear mandate for such an expert group. Before I come to an end, I have 2 questions with regard to the further process. We would like to know whether there's an opportunity to have another meeting of the virtual working group on targets and indicators. And we also would like to know whether written feedback on the proposal made by the co-facilitators is foreseen. And if so, in what time it should be provided. My last point with regard to milestones, we think that this shouldn't be discussed in the intersessional process, as it is mainly a task for the national level. Thank you very much, and sorry for speaking so long.
Thank you, Matthias. I'll just keep going unless Sylvia wants the floor. So I'll go next to Servet. Oh, Sylvia, go ahead.
Yeah, I just thought that if others have the same questions, maybe I can just clarify the questions that EU raised. Perhaps it might be helpful. So, so I think that timing-wise, so for this meeting, I think first of all, it's very important that we do discuss this thoroughly, and that's why, you know, these discussions are valuable and your inputs are valuable. So I think that that's, you know, it's one of our mandate issues to deal with. So I do think that it looks, if I look at the time, that we would need another meeting. So so I think that that is something that we are getting closer to having, definitely to have to propose. So the Secretariat, I assume, might have some ideas already on when that might be. And then in regards to written feedback, yes, I think that that would probably be valuable, but I would think that after this meeting, the co-facilitators and Secretariat, I think it would be valuable if we had a bit of time to, you know, use the information that we've received now, that we will and have received now during our discussions, to make a bit cleaner document that you can comment on first. And then when we do that, then obviously we'll have some window of time which will be restricted, because there's not that much time before we have to end all these virtual working groups. But we'll try to give you the most time possible for you both to make your comments and us to be able to compile them before the next meeting. So very vague, but at least it's optimistic, I hope. So continue with the speakers, Brenda, sorry.
Of course, thank you. Next speaker is Servet Boren from the ICCA.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you to the co-chairs for presenting us with the decision diagram. As mentioned by previous speakers, we also full support the continuation of the work. So the scenario 1 would be our preference. I'm not going to echo everything, but I wanted to highlight the topic that Laura from US mentioned, that it would be good to first have an idea of the actual targets before we dive into the indicators. So I'm not sure whether the proposal made by Bob to have a separate indicators team and a separate targets team would work in that way. On the other hand, we fully share the comment made by Bob from OECD that we would need extra expertise, statisticians, for example. And also it may be good to have a mapping, or at least an understanding by the expert, what are the existing indicators already out there that are being tracked by various other stakeholders. And I think this is in particular valid for the strategic objective D, where some of the indicators we discussed were also already being monitored elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Servet. The next we have is Priscilla from Brazil, followed by Abbas, Iran, followed by Carolyn Vickers. Please go ahead, Priscilla.
Thank you. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and a very happy new year, colleagues. This is Priscilla Alves from Brazil's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As it is the first time I take the floor, I would like to thank the co-facilitators for their hard work and commitment to achieve a balanced outcome, including for possible next steps. We appreciate the proposal for a process to establish indicators and milestones, which takes into account a wide range of views and concerns expressed within our virtual working group. In fact, although Brazil is not against the idea of creating an expert group to advance the work on indicators and milestones, which is very important, we think this task is one of the cornerstones of the implementation and taking stock of progress of the Beyond 2020 framework, and is too complex to be performed properly until IP4 and ICCM5. So from our perspective, this process needs time and very careful analysis to avoid partial solutions. So it shouldn't be started at this moment, considering the strict deadline we have ahead of us until IP4 and ICCM5. So in our opinion, scenario 2 would be more appropriate at this moment and considering the current circumstances. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Priscilla. Next, we have Abbas from Iran, followed by Carolyn Vickers of WHO.
Thank you very much. Regarding those scenarios, we support continuing our work regarding the targets, but as you know, some of our work has not finished. For instance, about issues of concerns, and but regarding creating an expert group on indicators and milestones, we think it is not proper to create that at this time. Maybe after IP4 and after IP4 consultation, there will be a more clear picture how we should do and what we should do after before ICCM5. And in that case, any decision should be made by Bureau, not by our virtual working group. Thank you.
Thank you, Abbas. Next, we have Carolyn Vickers from the WHO, followed by Auden from Norway, followed by Zuki. Please go ahead, Carolyn.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. The World Health Organization...
Have I missed someone, Sylvia?
No, I just wanted to ask those who have already spoke maybe to drop their hands so we don't have confusion on the hand who wants to speak, please.
Yeah, thanks. May I go ahead now?
Yes, please.
Yes. The World Health Organization supports the concept of undertaking technical work on indicators and then feeding that into the policy group on targets. The work could include checking the measurability and how well they inform the draft target, looking at available data, availability of methodology, whether there's a baseline, whether there's an organization already collecting the data. And this might be useful for the people working on the targets. We've noticed a number of organizations in the chat have supported this, and the IOMC organizations that listed there have indicated their willingness to contribute to the work, that is WHO, ILO, UNEP, and UNITAR. And I've also seen support expressed from Japan and ITUC. I apologize if I've missed anybody. Finally, I'd like to make a comment about the process. Whatever process is chosen, it is essential that it reflects the multi-sectoral nature of SciCam as well as the multi-stakeholder nature of SciCam. So, for example, if there were to be a regionally balanced group, not further elaborated to be multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder, that wouldn't be good enough. We want to make sure, for example, that the health sector sees itself in the targets and indicators so that they feel that they're contributing to the achievement of the Beyond 2020 framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. Next, we have Auden from Norway, followed by Zuki, followed by Sarah Coombs from Canada. Auden, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Just an additional comment to my first intervention. It has been proposed that we should do more work on the indicators, and it has been proposed also that we should bring in additional competence like statisticians. We fully support that. However, we would bring in a point of discussion, and that is whether we should add an extra loop before that so that we can make a workshop with a small group of SciCam stakeholders like in Cambridge and also in Geneva, where we can revise and refine the list of indicators a little bit, because this list would be a starting material for this further work by statisticians and similar. And the better the starting point for this extra competence group would be, the easier their work would be, and the more likely the success of this group would be also. Thank you.
Thank you, Auden. Next, we have Zuki from South Africa, followed by Sarah Coombs. Go ahead, Zuki.
Thank you, Brenna. As the African group, Sasha has written some comments on the chat box. As the African group, we are concerned about our effective participation in the virtual working group. We're not able to be effectively participating due to clashes. Unfortunately, not like most countries, you have one person responsible virtually for all these chemicals and waste MEAs. So what we are opting for is not doing any further work, us as a group, until ICCM 5. But if then there could be, because this is split, for example, statisticians to just look at how to improve measurability, but not to change the content, but to improve in terms of checking how to improve measurability of what we have compiled already, but not to dwell or get involved with the content per se, as in what we were saying. But in terms of us as a group, we are requesting that no further work be done because we're concerned about our effective participation. We have not been able, we have raised our concerns, not just with SciChem, the different groups, the secretary in terms of the clashes, but also with Bidamata, also with UNEP, also with BRS, because we're the same people that are in these MEAs, and our effective participation has been significantly compromised. So we're preferring an option of not doing further work as a group until ICCM 5, but if we can get statisticians to improve measurability, not to change the content as in what is intended, that we're fine with, and that be an option that is yet to be agreed by us. Thank you.
Thank you, Zuki. Next is Sarah Coombs from Canada.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's the first time I have spoken. And Happy New Year to all. As I sit here, I guess, I think it's very clear that there's a lot of important work still to do. So generally speaking, we are supportive of continuing the work. I think we would like a little bit more time to consider the various options and perhaps write in written feedback, as Sylvia had suggested. However, we are supportive of a number of the comments that have been made, the importance of a sort of iterative process, especially since many of the targets, we are not in a negotiated session. So the targets actually remain to be seen. However, given the complexity of the indicators process, we very much thank the IOMC for their willingness to provide their expertise to inform the decisions. And it is very important to have the appropriate expertise to help us make these choices. I think there's also, I'd like to support the WHO's perspective that not only regional balance is important, but sectoral and stakeholder balance is important to ensure that the various sectors see themselves and also are the custodians of many of the indicators that will be developed for specific targets. And then just one other point, I think it is really important for work to continue in some form or other over the next number of months. We don't actually know when IP4 is going to happen and how, and we don't know when ICCM 5 is going to happen, given the global pandemic, which is in still in full force. So I think it is very important to sort of consider these very carefully of how we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. So Sylvia, I don't see anyone else with their hand at this moment. Oh, I see Michelle Sharon from Switzerland. So I'll turn to Michelle first. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Brenda, for giving me the floor. Sorry for raising my hand a bit late. And sorry for taking the floor again. I already spoke on this point of discussion, but there were many interventions after my intervention, so that's why I would like to come back. I have listened carefully to many of the points made. I think there would be many advantages of keeping the momentum of this group and keep the work going. There is still a lot to be done. We're not close to having something that can be negotiated in a couple of days and agreed. So I think more preparatory work needs to be done, and it would be would be negative to lose time available that we have available now until IP4 and ICCM 5. I also heard the comments from the IOM and read the comments from IOMC organizations about their inputs and expertise. Of course, this is very welcome, and we think this should be definitely be used and taken up. And also other experts with additional expertise. I would also like to note that participation, there's this point that was mentioned about difficulties in participating in the process. I would say participation is much more difficult in a small closed group. So bringing these different points together, I would actually like to make an additional suggestion on how the work could be continued, and this would be to actually continue the work by continuing this group that we've had here, because this is an open group. We have had, if I look at the written submissions, we've had submissions from all UN regions and not only governments, but all stakeholder groups. And I think going forward, I think this will be important to include everyone. Having regional balance, I agree with WHO, is not enough. We need the stakeholders. So continuing this group would render this possible. It would be, we would have all the regions, we would have all the stakeholder groups. There could be inputs by experts with additional expertise, and we could therefore ensure moving forward on targets and indicators by going forth and back between the two. I mean, I see many advantages, and we will also avoid a lengthy nomination process by just saying it is open and using the format that we've had, and that worked quite well. So this would be my suggestion, and I hope colleagues can give it some consideration. Thank you very much.
Okay, Sylvia, I don't see any other hands asking for the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. And I understand we have different views, and you know, there are concerns voiced, and one concern I definitely can assure you that our mandate is to provide recommendations to the Bureau on how we see the process forward. So it is, of course, the Bureau that is going to take these recommendations and make a decision. So in that sense, it is what we are bringing forward are recommendations. So I heard a concern, I think, about the Bureau's role. Well, I think we've all heard the different suggestions and the views from colleagues, and then I would like to move to the next slide then. And maybe what I can say is that you know, we're capturing all your comments, and looking at the time again, I think you know, the plan will probably be that we will come back with a suggestion with the much kind of more a form in the form of recommendations that we could capture this discussion in a form that we could discuss probably then at the next final meeting. So it's supposed to be our final meeting, but it looks like we're going to have a next final meeting. So now we're going to branch just off. I understand that some people do not agree with the scenario 1, but would prefer the scenario 2. But even those who were considering the scenario 2, I understand did have some ideas on if it went ahead with scenario 1, what they would prefer. So I think that it would be valuable for us to continue discussing the scenario 1 and the different options that we have, and what we identified in this discussion tree was 2 kinds of options or ways forward, which we felt were different in the submissions. So there was the submissions that were looking at the definition of work being more, the continuation of the virtual working group, continuation of very similar work that we're doing on continuing to advance formulations in the targets, looking also at the indicators. And then there was other submissions that were mentioning a different type of group that was, some of you already mentioned it, that included statistical office representatives, and was more focusing on indicator work and going into detail on specific indicator work. So from what if we can move to the next, the important part I think here on this slide is that there was some guidance that was put forward as guidance that should be taken into consideration if there was further work done during this period on the targets and indicators. So that's that which is in blue. So this is from one of the submissions, the guidance that they felt that is important, that would be considered as the group either continues their work or a new group takes on something like this. And if we can move to the next slide, I think it was in the next slide. No, then one more. Sorry. Okay, so here you see kind of the different steps that we took from the submissions on the different types, the different kinds of work that people were suggesting could be taken on by a group that would be similar to the virtual working group or the continuation of the virtual working group. And the next slide. And this was the work that was, I think some of you already noted it, and some of you would prefer this work rather than the work on targets, to go into detail on the indicator framework and looking very specifically on methodology development and also reviewing indicators and finding those indicators that are, I think IOMC mentioned, and some also, necessity to look at the indicators that are already being tracked, and also in reference to the SDGs and how those might be useful for the Beyond 2020 Instruments indicator framework. So this is very, what we saw when we were creating the decision tree, that this was very different than the type of work that submissions were suggesting in the other work, which was in the slide above. So I think this is a good time, perhaps, that I think the Secretariat has received and the UK proposal is available, because I understand that is a hybrid of these two different options. So perhaps I could give then the UK the floor, and then we could have a discussion on how we see, if we would go for scenario 1, what would be our preference on the way forward, and the recommendation that we would give to the Bureau on that. So Secretariat, are we ready to show those slides? And UK, are you ready to briefly, being mindful of the time, I'm taking up enough of it on myself, but I'll ask the UK also to be brief. Thank you.
Not sure from the UK who was going to introduce this, so maybe you could raise your hand. Is it Kay or? Okay, it's Samantha. Great. If you could unmute Samantha, go ahead.
Hello, thank you. And thank you to the co-facilitators and Secretariat for allowing us the time during this meeting to present on this topic. And hopefully this presentation I'm about to go through also answers some of the queries that we've been discussing in this group today. I will try and be concise, Sylvia, because I am conscious we are short on time. So can I just have the next slide there, please? Thank you. So I think as I go through this, it's important to remind ourselves that the lessons we've learned from other existing frameworks, for example, biodiversity, have shown us very clearly that it is crucial for indicators and targets to be developed in parallel with one another via an iterative process, as I believe others have talked about here, which we mentioned in our earlier intervention on the C targets as well. So this iterative process allows us to identify really early on which indicators might be appropriate for a target, and vice versa, which targets may need further refinement in order to be measurable in a way which makes this framework effective. So some work therefore needs to be done in tandem with the targets built on the previous work that's already taken place on indicators. And we are hopeful that this work, rather than being an additional burden on the virtual working group, should actually save us time by making target development easier. So on the second bullet point there, it's also important that any work on targets and indicators is joined up with the discussions that we've been having as part of these virtual working groups. As I believe others have suggested, an approach of having an expert subgroup for this virtual working group then, which is supported by the Bureau in the overall process and scope, would achieve this. The Bureau has a very important role in improving the scope and process, but our view is that because it's virtual, we want this to be as inclusive as possible so that those who have the expertise can engage in this group. Because it's difficult at the moment, obviously, we are all still in the pandemic and we recognise that. So I think just to try and be as inclusive as possible, that's why we think it should be completely open, and that those experts that need to engage can engage, and we should be trying to do it that way until ICCM 5. An open approach will also allow those with different skill sets for developing targets and indicators to become involved and called upon more flexibly as needed, which would mean also that different people than those taking part in these virtual working groups would be involved, rather than just one person attending everything. And this obviously should help us with participation, capacity, and progressing the work within these timescales. So in order to achieve this, a hybrid approach has been developed. And I will show you that in the next slides diagram. If we could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So to summarize, in this hybrid option, we envisage there being an expert technical subgroup to support the work of Virtual Working Group 1 and also Virtual Working Group 2. So this expert group should consist of indicator experts, data experts, statisticians, etc. The group should work towards achieving elements of the deliverables from both options 1 and 2, as outlined by the co-chairs in their decision tree proposal and reiterated here. So the objectives of this group would be to propose a small number of headline indicators, identify data custodians and gaps, consider measurability, methodology, and where changes to target wording may be helpful. So in order to ensure that the process remains iterative, this subgroup would then proceed to feed into the Virtual Working Group 1 and Virtual Working Group 2 discussions, which, as we know, consist of largely policy experts and negotiators, as you see on the right-hand side of this diagram. So feeding into the other virtual working group, the Virtual Working Group 2 on governance and mechanisms for implementation, is also important here, given how we've talked in this group before on multiple occasions now about how the indicator work is vital for consideration on reporting and taking stock of progress work, which those groups are also discussing. So the arrows in the diagram here demonstrate once again how this would be an iterative process. The virtual working group discussions feeding into the expert subgroup and then receiving feedback from the subgroup to further the development of indicators based on those discussions. The virtual working groups should consider the advice provided by the expert subgroup to assist in target formulation, reporting and taking stock of progress, and send those draft targets under the strategic objectives to be assessed for measurability by data experts. The result of this process, which you should see in the grey box below, should be that we are able to more clearly define and understand recommendations on target relevant indicator options, taking into account the input from the expert subgroup, and are able then to produce a small number of headline indicators that can be measured from day one of the adoption of the new framework at ICCM 5. Thank you.
Okay, so if I can just take the liberty to do a kind of interpretation of the UK's presentation using the discussion tree that you have, because I understand that some of you, obviously, you know, it's difficult depending on whether you're working off a tablet or a computer or on your phones to maybe see. But the way I see it, and UK just in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand is that this hybrid option, basically the Virtual Working Group 1 and Virtual Working Group 2 continues deliberations as we would see fit and necessary. And then this subgroup would be, you know, working also at certain times on the indicator work. So the indicator work that is under the scenario option 2 would be the work that would be the work conducted by the subgroup, and then the option 1 work would be continued to be the larger, you know, more policy orientated group, which would be the which is under your option 1. So I think that's the way I understood it. So it's not putting these groups one or the other, but it's saying that both this kind of work should need to be continued, but it wouldn't be done perhaps by the same people. It would definitely not be done at the same time, because we know that in some cases they will be the same people. But this would allow for both types of work to move forward. Okay, so can you just tell, is that correct, what I have just said? And
Yes, thank you, Sylvia. I think that's a good summary of our proposal. Thank you.
Okay. It just, because that way we can't keep everything on the screen, so that just helps people that have the document in front of them in some other form. Okay, so what I would like to propose now, so we have while we've been discussing things, we were making arrangements for a final meeting. And so I think it's important that we have your views on these particular options. So I'm interested to hear the scope of work you think would be valuable to move forward. I know I have heard from some of you that you feel that the indicator needs to move forward, but now I'd be more interested to hear if you agree with the detail of this mandate of the group, which is in the discussion tree. Some of you in regards to the targets, if you feel that work is that work that needs to be moved forward, either only or combination, then I would be interested to hear the scope that you see there. And then after collecting kind of your views, what I would suggest is that you allow us to have time and a weekend in between to prepare something that looks more like a, kind of like a document with recommendations laid out, which I think we could get for you, for instance, by the 18th or 19th of January, which would allow you to send in your written comments as you requested, for instance, by the 25th of January. And then we would all be able to look at everyone's written submissions and have a discussion on and finalization of those recommendations to the Bureau on a meeting, hopefully which we can arrange on the 1st of February. So that's the way I would propose that we move forward so that we can manage this. So please, we've made very detailed notes, I think, for the contributions that you've made in the previous discussion. So you don't necessarily need to repeat it. But if there are special emphasis you want to put on these different now also this hybrid option, which was not available before the UK made this presentation. Please, just let us know your opinions. We'll take notes and we'll work on how to move this forward. Does this mean everyone has already exhausted all their points? That's also fine.
I see that Auden from Norway is asking for the floor, Sylvia. Auden, yes, followed by Bob Diedrich from the OECD.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you to the UK for this hybrid version and the presentation they have been giving. We would very much support an iterative approach as described by UK, and as we see important tasks in the mandate of both option 1 and option 2, we see the hybrid version as a good opportunity on the way forward. I would also like to say that for the option 1 part of this hybrid, the proposal by Switzerland to use this group as the basis for further work may be a good idea to save time. I think the mandate of this of the further process is the most important thing, and that is that we should do only technical work. It should be only to look at the measurability of the targets and the databases for the indicators and so on. And we should not try to affect the content of the targets in any way. So that's the most important. Thank you.
Thank you, Loudon. Next is Bob Diedrich from Norway, from OECD, and then the government of Japan. Please go ahead, Bob.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the UK for the proposal. I think this is exactly what I had in mind. So I'm very much in support of that. And in terms of the terms of reference for the expert group, I think the text I see in blue from your discussion scheme is most relevant, I think, for that technical working group. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next, we have Government of Japan, followed by Tessa from UNEP. Please go ahead, Japan.
Thank you very much to UK for your proposal. We also believe that the target and indicators should be discussed in line with the relevant items such as a review process. Therefore, hybrid of VWG 1 and 2 is ideal. So we pretty much support your idea. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Please go ahead, UNEP. Tessa Govers, I think, is asking for the floor. Tessa?
Thank you very much. We also would like to thank the UK. UNEP supports the establishment of such a technical expert group to support the work on targets and particularly their measurability through an iterative process. We would like to suggest that in the search for headline indicators, an inventory is undertaking of what is actually currently existing in terms of relevant indicators, their methodologies, their coverage, the existence of custodians or data collection processes, so that also the feasibility to report on these can be assessed. We stand ready to support in this process. And also would like to suggest to focus beyond what might be immediately available from day one, as we currently know that the targets have not been finalized, but so that we do have some insight and knowledge on what would be available as possible indicators once the targets are agreed. And also whether these will be helpful in reporting and actually talking to tracking progress. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, UNEP. Sylvia, I don't see anyone else asking for the floor. Maybe give it a few seconds, but there's no other hands up. Oh, I see. Okay. Laura Nazef from the US is asking for the floor. Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. We think it would be a good idea definitely for the two virtual working groups 1 and 2 to discuss, amongst the co-facilitators, perhaps with a joint session. But we will also be submitting some further views in writing. Thank you.
Sylvia, I don't see anyone. Oh, Brazil, Priscilla is asking for the floor. Please go ahead, Priscilla.
Hello? No, just to say that we agree with the proposal by the co-facilitator to send written comments at the end of January and then have another meeting to discuss possible recommendations to the Bureau on this matter. It would be very important to have more time to think about the new proposal, and we thank the UK for the proposal, of course. And then just to say that we agree with this idea of having more time to send further written comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priscilla. I see Matthias Wolf from the European Union. Go ahead, Matthias.
Yes, thank you very much to the UK at first for that proposal. We will carefully consider it, and we agree with the proposal made by Sylvia, how to further approach, and we'll come back with written comments. And of course, we would also appreciate another meeting of this virtual working group. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to let Brenda say that there's no one else, because as soon as she'll say no one else, then someone will put up their hand again, right? So so I understand there's no one is making further comments, but we do have some comments in the chat also supporting this approach. So just so you you can have a reflection of those. And as I understood from the UNEP intervention, that they are you know, ready to support in the preparation and inventory of the existing indicators. So I think this also would be an important step if we move forward on making recommendations in this work, that's integrated into this, because I think that would be very helpful in making sure that the work on indicators has a sound basis to start from, because I think that's an important issue, and someone needs to take that task on. So thank you, UNEP, for volunteering for that. So as I said then, and I would invite you to hold on sending written submissions until we have an opportunity to create a more like document formatted kind of text that you can comment on and provide your written submissions, because I think that this discussion tree, whatever, it was not very favorable for that, and also because we don't have the hybrid option just presented there. So as I said, just to go through the commitments that I just from my side and the Secretariat and my co-facilitator have committed to. So I would ask you to hold off on your any comments you might have, not forgetting what comments you want to make, until we then prepare the written submission upon which you can give your comments. So we'll try as much as possible kind of to reflect what you've already said, so that it is in a format that is favorable to providing comments. And then we'll provide you information on how to move it forward. So we'll do our best, our very best, and we've tried up until now, and I hope you'll agree that we have somewhat succeeded considering the time that we've had at our disposal. But we'll try our best to make sure that there is enough time between your receipt of what you need to give written submissions on and you know, your necessity to give us feedback on it. But again, we want to make sure that we have the time to compile, you know, do a compilation document of your submissions and to get that out also before the meeting to make it easier also. So you know, we're going to try to find the best option to make sure that we are prepared for the meeting. So thank you for your thoughts. I think it's been a very valuable discussion, and we are taking into account all all the concerns mentioned, including the restrictions we understand and constraints in participation, and the necessity to, as much as possible, harmonize and our different schedules as much as possible to everything going on globally in international chemicals and waste sphere. Okay, so we don't have that much time for the last item, but considering the comments kind of that I already heard some of you make in your interventions up until now, there might be an easy way to get through this material. So can we move now to the slide, which is the yes, is this the next one? Okay, good. Okay, so yes, I just wanted to note one thing that we, some of us may have forgotten, that we had certain issues that we had already identified in the IP4-3 document that are issues that need broader deliberations and that need to be reflected upon in at some stage in looking at the targets and indicators framework. And those have basically been reiterated during our discussions here. So the first has been the issue of waste and how to further reflect that, different references to countries or governments, and the target dates, which we haven't dealt with. And also it came up when we were discussing the different targets as well, different definitions that there needs to be kind of at least a common understanding of what we mean to refer to. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. Okay. So our the first part of our mandate was to finalize the targets proposal currently set out in IP4-3 with a view to enable multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral commitment and action where appropriate. So I don't know about the rest of you, how optimistic you were when you saw this mandate when we initially started, especially with the word finalize the targets, and especially recognizing the fact that we are not in a negotiation mode. And we all know the challenges of finalizing something that includes words if we are not in negotiation setting. So clearly, we have not finalized the targets. And if we look at the different discussions that we have, I think that there is a certain amount of agreement among us on particular targets that we recognize that this is not the stage that we probably will be able to finalize, even if we were in a negotiation mode. But in our last meeting, you kindly gave us, as co-facilitators and the Secretariat, the green light to create these facilitative tables that we created. And I understand that there has been a bit of a disconnect perhaps between the way we understood the task and some expectations perhaps that you expected of us as co-facilitators. So what we understood and how we drafted these tables, if we can just move to the next slide, I think the next slide, yes. So the way we understood the task and the way we have done it is we have not included the different formulations of the targets that were in your submissions. So we felt that that would be an burdensome table, and we felt that the most important part of this, the function of this table was to facilitate our discussion and the components of the target portion part of this table, because and the focus element, because we felt that in our discussions we've talked a lot around the formulations of the wording, and there are kind of, you know, in understanding what formulation of wording we think would be more appropriate, we felt it was important that you kind of acknowledge as a group what kind of components we are including in this target to make sure that we're covering the strategic objective, and that we understand what the focus of that specifically target is, so that we would understand where there are gaps and where there are duplications. Sorry. So that's why you don't see the different wording. And what I have heard through some comments today, and perhaps from comments from colleagues, is that there was the intention or the feeling from the group that the co-facilitators would try to propose, where possible, the best wording for those targets that we felt that could be proposed, the best wording of those that are submitted via the discussions we had. Unfortunately, either through not understanding that this was the understanding, or maybe we blocked it out because we had so many other things also to do besides this, and what we promised you to do for you before the end of the year. That's not what we did. So seeing now that we have proposed the next meeting, and if this is what the intention was, and if this is what you would like to task the co-facilitators, then I would suggest that's something that we could prepare for the next time. So where we felt that these facilitative tables lended to themselves a clear proposal on formulation for the target discussions that we've had on the individual targets, we could prepare such a step for the next meeting. I would like to note that they will most likely not be related to the targets under C objective, and most likely not be related to targets formulation suggestions under the the strategic objective D target proposals, because in those two particular instances, it seems that your general feeling is that we should park these particular target formulations until the discussions in the respective virtual working groups have been completed, or at least advanced either now or before at a later date, closer to some sort of agreement. So I understand that this is a difficult thing to perhaps react to now in the setting that we have virtually, but I'm sorry, but this is what I am proposing right now. So if you do agree that that was the intent of, you thought that the co-facilitators would conduct this work and select those targets where there was a closer idea of the wording and how to move forward, then I'll open the floor now and want to hear comments, and then that is something that we can do before the next meeting, which seems it will be scheduled for the 1st of February. So from my side and from Wajira's side, I apologize that we did not were not clear on what we were expected to do, but this is, you know, this is where we are, and so this is why I want to suggest this, because I don't think Wajid and I are prepared to give you that kind of insight today. So I open the floor, and please let me know what your thoughts are, and be, you know, constructive criticism is good. So be blunt if you need to be, and you know, we'll take it well.
Well, I see Matthias Wolf would like to take the floor. Matthias, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Sylvia. And yes, we somehow expect that we are working on modifications of the target wording. Sorry for putting you a bit under pressure. We understand absolutely that it's an overload of work for you, for Bahira and the Secretariat. But of course, we would appreciate if it is somehow possible to keep what proposals were made for target modifications. The new targets, I guess, you captured already. But also the modifications and the proposals for merging targets and so on. It would be helpful to capture that input given by stakeholders for further work. In this regard, I'm not sure whether I got you correctly, as you mentioned that the targets under objectives C and D should be left open. In our understanding, it should be the targets under objectives C and E as the targets on. Yeah, all right. I see it was a misunderstanding. Thanks, Sylvia. Yeah, that's it from our side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias, from
Thanks,
European
Matthias.
Union.
Next week.
Yes, Brenda, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Alex, for picking up earlier. Bob Diedrich from the OECD is next.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. So I would very much welcome if the co-facilitators and Secretariat could give it a try and pull together all of the interventions that you've heard and seen for an advanced version of the targets and the wording of the targets. I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't try. If it ends up in too much of shouting and screaming afterwards, then that's fine. But I think it's worthwhile trying it out, and I have all the confidence in that it will not end up in screaming and shouting. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Next, we have Sarah Coombs from Canada.
Yes, I think we would also reiterate welcoming the co-facilitators to give it a try. We know it's a monumental task, but I think it would be very helpful to capture the different modifications, noting that there isn't necessarily agreement on any particular one. And maybe there could be sort of a considerations section or something just that kind of notes some of those details where there seems to be convergence or just a couple of considerations for each of those. And then I guess I just have a question because, and maybe I'm just tired, but I don't recall parking either D or E. And if you could just remind me of that conversation as to what the rationale was on parking E.
Yeah, sorry. I believe, but then I will go back to my notes. But I think there, in the submissions, there were quite a lot of comments on not all the E targets, but I think it was the target that were specifically related to integrated approach to financing. That there was quite an overwhelming number of submissions that were saying that until the integrated approach to financing discussion is advanced, if not finalized, that would be very difficult to work on that particular target. But I would have to go back to my notes. I'm sorry. I think it's on one of these slides.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
So next is Semia Galbi. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all your great work and to compile all the different suggestions. However, we don't see that our proposals or our reflections are inside these presentations, and still, as we reflected before, still very vague. That in the sense that when we speak about the strategic objective of A, it is the measures, and we keep in the targets the word of measures. But what we need more to be more helpful from our point of view is to specify what kind of measures we would like to see. That means this is still keeping in this is still very vague. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samia. Next, we have Michelle from Switzerland.
Thank you very much. Many thanks to the co-chairs for putting together this table. It's very useful, and it is indeed a lot of work, of course, so it's much appreciated. I would like to comment on the additional targets under A, as there is a target that Switzerland had proposed at IP3. And it says in the table that there is no specific wording proposed for the target which is on non-governmental standards and labels. And so in fact, we had proposed a wording, and so I'm going to happy to resend that, and would like to ask it be included also in a follow-up version of this table. And I'm happy also to copy it in the chat. The target is the wording is also included in the document. I think it's IP4/3 in the appendix. Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, sorry, Michelle, and if we can just move forward in the tables here, we actually do have it. We had reflected your text in the slides, but we did not update the submission. So yes, we do have it. Thank you, and I'm sorry, apologies for that. We can move the couple slides forward, maybe where it is. I think it's under, yeah, here, under the new targets. Yeah, here, yeah. Yes, and sorry, I can
Laura
reflect
Nazef is asking for the floor from the US. Shall I
yeah,
pass
1
it to
minute,
Laura?
sorry. Yeah, hold on 1 minute. I just wanted to, in regards to IPEN's comment, I think I was trying to say, but perhaps that wasn't captured, that I didn't include all submissions here. So it was trying to show the different capturing the ideas that have come through our discussions, not writing down all submissions. So I think if there are any complaints that I haven't included all the different formulations, that's what I was trying to say, that I have not included them here. So just to note that it was not the intent of these tables to copy paste all the submissions of that were made. So just so you know. So Laura now?
Oh, thank you, Sylvia. Thank you. We really do appreciate your proposal to co-facilitators to put together some draft targets that reflect our discussions and our submissions, because we have so many different versions, I think, and good raw material, but to move forward, we need to have something to focus on. So that we much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure, Brenda, there are no more comments or?
See it, Sylvia.
We didn't hear you well. You're saying there are no more hands?
Yeah. Okay, I see Priscilla from Brazil with her hand up. So Priscilla, you have the floor. I don't see other hands yet. Go ahead, Priscilla.
Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate the work done in the virtual working group. We know how difficult it is to perform such a complex task, but we are afraid that we won't have enough time to reach consensus in terms of new language and new texts. So we have some concerns regarding this proposal, but maybe a possible solution could be the creation of a new section, I don't know, in which all proposals made by stakeholders could be presented, and also the level of consensus or something like this could also be presented. I don't know. It's because we, as far as I understood, we are going to have only one more meeting to discuss possible recommendations. So we think it would be very difficult to discuss language and different texts for the targets, and in fact it will be very difficult to reach consensus in terms of recommendations. So just to highlight our concerns and maybe a possible solution in terms of creating a new section, I don't know. But we do appreciate the hard work of the co-facilitators. Thanks so much.
If I can just comment, thank you, Priscilla, for your comment. I think what I heard from colleagues now is not that we are going to propose wording for every single target under all the objectives, but what I heard was that where we feel from submissions submitted, from discussions we've had, that there is some advancement in wording. Or, for instance, I know, now I can't off the top of my head, of course, recall, but there were suggestions that were pretty unanimous in concluding, for instance, that certain targets need to be combined, that there is repetitiveness. I think those are the kinds of things I think the colleagues are expecting. I don't believe through the comments that I've heard from colleagues now that they expected a miracle, that we're going to perfect wording on one for, or all the targets, but that where it's possible to make some conclusions from our deliberations, that is what I understand colleagues are looking for. And in any case, in the final meeting, if there's definitely the option to say that none of these conclusions can be made. So I think that's the way I understand it. So I don't see it as us concluding wording on the targets, but just advancing in certain areas where we have had fairly good consensus on different issues that we have discussed. And in that sense, I think I agree with colleagues that it would be unfortunate that the time that we've spent and would not be maybe reflected in that way. But in any case, the submissions are not, I mean, the submissions as they stand, of course, continue to stand. So there's no intention to erase or not make accessible the different submissions that have been made under the strategic objectives. So I don't know if that makes it more clear, or if I've made it even more complicated, but I think that was the intention, not necessarily to agree on everything, but to draw out points where there is convergence that has been reached on certain issues. Okay, again, I feel that if I give Brenda the floor to say that there are no more hands up, there will be hands up. So Brenda, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you the floor. We have eight more. Are you interjecting to say that there is another hand?
Maybe if I say that there are no hands.
Oh no!
Mr. Abbas Turabi from Iran would like to have a floor.
Okay, good. Abbas, please.
Thank you very much. Sorry to take the floor very late. I know everybody's tired and wants to leave, but this is my last comment and maybe the meeting will finish. Regarding this table, it's very good and we support developing that. It's very hard work done by co-facilitators. But as the co-facilitator, Sylvia, research, she thought that there is a consensus in some areas about some parts of our work. As you know, every stakeholder is not attending in this mutual working group, and if you call it consensus, maybe to some extent it is not right to say consensus. Not everybody, every stakeholder is attending. The outcome of this group should be put forward to IP4. So we should put it as suggestions or as proposals of this group for more consideration to the group, to the IP4. So this is my comment, and thank you very much.
Okay.
I don't see other hands up, Sylvia.
Okay. So yes, okay, I understand there are concerns, and I think that there are enough who have said that let's try. So let's try. And we know very well, in the previous work of the technical working group, that there are ways to formulate different progress that we've made in a way that can be agreeable without committing and having to commit that this is something that is written in stone. So I think that let's give it a try. I mean, if it works, I can't remember who said it. It would be a missed opportunity if we don't try. So I think that then let's try, and if not, then the 1st of February, then it will be clear that that we will be moving forward with recommendations on the way forward, and we will discuss then what to do with the rest. So thank you very much. It was a very, from my side, very fruitful meeting. I understand that some of you were hoping that our work was done today, but a bit longer. But I think that the work that we can do now between now and the 1st of February, I think will be very, very useful, and I think that it would be good if we could move forward to the Bureau with some recommendations that would reflect both our concerns and our interests as a stakeholder, a collection of stakeholders, participating quite actively in this virtual working group. Okay, Wahira, did you want to say something as well before we finish?
No, Sylvia, you have said everything. I also want to thank all the participants for their active participation and enthusiastic contribution. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, and also obviously to the Secretariat and all of you, and I hope your new year has started off well enough, and then we look forward to you reacting to our written. Now I can't speak anymore. I think you all understand what I meant to say. So thank you very much, and we'll see you then soon again. Goodbye.